Excellent. Welcome to the TADSummit Innovators. There's somebody that we should have had on a long time ago, but he's here now, and that is Anthony Minessale. He is the founder of, well, quite a few companies, but in particular, that underlie the whole of programmable communications, and that is FreeSWITCH, the open source project, and SignalWire. So, Anthony, please introduce yourself and maybe give us a little background as to why you started FreeSWITCH nearly, oh no, it's more than 20 years ago now. God, time flies.
Yep. It's yeah, it was 2005, so I think we're at 20 years. So back then I was working on a bunch of different internet stuff. I've always, the minute I found the internet, I was in love with it. I did all kinds of web backends and Unix and everything like that. And somewhere along the line, I got into telecom, so I think it was after the web burst, the dot-com bubble popped.
Yeah.
So it was like a lot of us, like old people, web devs, like started getting attracted to voice over IP. It was kind of the next frontier for the same kind of stuff. It had a lot to do with each other as far as like how you scale it and everything. So
Yeah.
it was just a little bit more challenging version of what websites were. So I had all this expertise in building like a really big web hosting company, and I started looking into voice over IP because the next kind of cool thing to do back then was call centers. And today we take it for granted, but I'm talking about 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
call centers were all physical, and it wasn't very easy to do. And I wanted to do it through the internet. So I started playing around with different things, and I got kind of into open source stuff like Asterisk was a kind of, at that time it was, Asterisk is a little older than us by like 5 or 6 years, so it was young still, but it was there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the best choice at the time for making anything, right? So like I started working on it. I spent years on it, actually 2 or 3 years. Like I ended up with commit access to it, reviewed patches and contributed a whole bunch. Wrote a bunch of the features that are still in there. Probably broke things more than anything because I had so many ideas that I kept trying to add more and more stuff.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, it was like the things I was prototyping in it, I was kind of seeing a vision that was beyond what the purpose of it was, right?
Yeah.
So I started almost hurting it, and I felt like I really need something that does what I want, and I don't want to keep like trying to force Asterix into this paradigm that it isn't meant for. So I
Exactly.
eventually was like, I'm just gonna make my own thing. And I got frustrated one day. I think I was like, I don't know, I don't remember when it was. It was like some random day in 2005. I just like went and poured myself like a Johnny Walker, which I in the middle of the day I've only done like 2 times in my life. But this is one day I was just like, I really have to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And I just started an empty directory and started typing and like, just built a little mini core and stuff.
Yep.
And so it was like, I mostly started to vent my own frustration
Yes.
of not being able to do what I wanted because I was picturing this whole world where everything is on the internet. I
Yeah.
wanted telecom to be on the internet instead of through phone wires, right? So
Exactly.
that's where it started.
Yep.
And like, so I decided I needed to build something that I had more control over that was like in the paradigm that I wanted. So like I started building it, made it modular, um, spent a lot of time just kind of getting the core of it. It's like a kind of module. It's similar to Apache and Asterisk, Nginx, any of those. Inspired by them all with being able to load plugins and all that kind of thing. So we designed it that way. Um, I immediately had like Brian Lest and Link Juris, who were with me from day one, pretty much,
Yep.
joined the club, and we went from a little tiny IRC channel, 3 people in it, to hundreds
Yep.
in a short amount of time. Built something. It didn't work at first. We had some great telco partners. People like bandwidth.com, like the CTO at the time, would like run some of his like crappier traffic through it to figure out where all the mistakes were, find bugs and crashes and everything. And
Oh.
so we kind of started out like this really super scalable telecom engine, right? So the first use case was all about moving calls from A to B, because this is a time when everyone was like thinking that voice over IP was lame. You know, like the carriers are all like, that'll never fly. You need circuits for everything, right? And it was like, oh yeah, well I could take this entire DS3 and move it through the internet over to another server.
Yep.
So we started doing that. Um, and then got to the point where the software could melt one of those circuits. Like you could put like you hook up like a DS3 circuit to through SIP, like a Cisco SIP
Yep.
ATA thing, whatever those things are called. I can't remember, AS5300 or something like that,
Oh
where
yeah.
you could put like telecom circuits and turn
Yep.
them into SIP. And we would point it at FreeSWITCH, and we could make that go offline just by sending too many calls to it, right? And we started like getting past the industry standard of like 50 calls a second or whatever. So considering we had very little to work with at the time, it was all kind of a bet for me technology wise on
Hmm.
multiple cores and computers. Like we were the first machine I built my prototype on only had 2 cores in it. But I
Wow.
said one day there are going to be lots of cores in
Yeah.
computers. So I'm going to like, even though most of the school of thought at the time was like you should only have 1 thread per processor in your whole computer, I had this thought that like I don't really buy that because like the
Yeah.
Linux kernel is getting better and better and better, and it has multi-threading and
Yep.
it's time slicing it really, so it
Hmm.
isn't as perfectly threaded as like a purist might say. But like the scheduler and all the functionality in the kernel, when done right, you can put lots of different threads at once and do a bunch of concurrency, so you can like
Exactly.
really get like into every inch of a computer's resources. So like my early work was trying to figure out how can I like take any computer and like just redline it almost. Like if it had however many cores it has, I want to use 80% of all of them. I don't want to just have one and the rest are idle. I want to
Yep.
figure out how to like really use the computer.
Hmm.
So that was kind of one of the things that like next thing you know, there's 8 core boxes are normal. And like now my phone probably has like 12 cores in it, you know. So like
Exactly.
we didn't that was kind of a big bet because at the time it was frowned upon and like Asterisk was like a it kind of had threading in it. It also forked. It was
Yeah.
kind of switched. It was born as a forking mod, and that was just like a design choice at the time. And like it
Hmm.
really kind of took some just going for it, right? Really don't know what's gonna
Exactly.
happen, but it
But
seemed like that was smart. So I mean,
yep.
that it was mostly just to like try and really figure out like how much can I do on one computer? What
Hmm.
kind of functionality that everyone else was charging at the time, like ungodly money. Like
Yes.
just voicemail was its own like expensive refrigerator sized box that you have to buy,
Yep.
and it was
And
like,
millions of dollars.
yeah,
You
a
know,
million
it was
dollars just for
crazy.
voicemail.
Yeah.
And like another one would be just for the call processing. And like of course then Cisco doing the same thing,
Hmm.
Meta Switch, take your pick, Sonus. Um, and
Exactly.
really everyone couldn't afford it. So we sort of in a Robin Hood kind of way made this thing that like took the place of that. And
Yep.
then it ended up getting pretty popular from that because everyone was building like CLECs and whatnot. So all of a sudden everyone's a
Exactly.
CLEC because they all could take FreeSWITCH and like set it up.
Yep.
So that's really kind of the driving force and always been kind of product led, even with open source. Like I
Hmm.
always say that like open source is as hard to sell as expensive product. It can be, it doesn't matter if it's free, like that's nothing to do with anything. Like most
Exactly.
people think about open source and think about how much money it costs and stuff, but like you want someone to use it, it could be completely free, but if it doesn't solve a problem, they still won't use it. You can't even get
Exactly.
people to like take your free software and use it. So like, yeah, that's just sort of like we followed the needs of the world and kind of
Oh yeah.
anticipated some of that. And we ended up making like, you know, trying to keep up with the times. We started out like everything was like telecom, everything was ULA calls like at scale, and everyone was just doing that. And then it started to be like WebRTC kind of finally made
Yep.
video worthwhile, because we used
Yep.
to have these like little phones with postage stamp size video screens on them, but no one really cared. But like once every browser in the world could have video in it, then it
Exactly.
made more sense to start doing
Yeah.
that. So we started digging into WebRTC more. Kind of waited a few years for it to mature. Kept up with those
Exactly.
things. So yeah, it was really kind of that the really driving factor was my own kind of desire to solve a problem that was driving me insane.
Well, and do it in a highly scalable way. Because I remember for me, when so FreeSWITch came from, yep, there's this project to, it's the king of the projects is when Twilio was, began on Asterisk, hit the scalability problem. Once you get past basically sort of 500 to 1,000 seats, I was interviewing customers and they were in tears. They had this thing that was growing because the model had been proven. Programmable communications works. Empower developers and they'll create amazing things. And they had a service, it was growing, and then things were falling down. And at that transition point, when FreeSWITCH came in and solved the scalability problem. I sort of see that as like the crowning moment where the default moved away from Asterisk over to FreeSWITCH. I don't know if you agree with that, but from the outside looking in, I think that was a defining moment to where now FreeSWITCH is the dominant project behind most of programmable communications.
Yeah, it seems like also Asterisk sort of, I don't know, it was a place in my heart for it, but it kind of ended up in the hands of people that don't really use it anymore. Like it got part of a sale, and like Sangoma has it now, and like I don't know if they really Sangoma uses FreeSWITch for everything too, but they probably don't like to talk about that.
Yeah.
But those guys have always been. I never would have imagined they would all end up together because they're
Yeah.
mortal enemies in the past. But
I know it is. It sort of reinvents itself. So that is a great review of why you achieved such success with FreeSWITCH. Now, what drove you to create SignalWire?
so that one comes from once FreeSWITch was popular, then it got out of hand with like the people wanting stuff from us and
Yeah.
like and trying to figure out like how to even pick what to do. Like and we started out like very obsessed with making sure it would work anywhere. Like it
Hmm.
builds on Windows and it'll build on any version of Linux and BSD and maintaining that it became like a giant nightmare.
Yeah.
And over the years, like we kind of picked one. We picked like Debian. We were
Yeah.
on CentOS for the first like 10 years until it died. And then we moved to Debian.
Yeah.
And like, but we're always cool with it working everywhere. It still works. You can build it and run it on Windows and Mac and all these different places. Because
Yeah.
that was one of the ways that made it stable is that we were worried about making when you try and build it everywhere, you get the perspective of all the different kinds of compilers and stuff. So like we started to settle in on like how are we going to deal with this because we have all these giant companies starting to use it too, right? And they're always
Hmm.
asking for stuff and like how are we going to like normalize everything so that people can really succeed. So it
Yeah.
just kept going to the point where like first we tried to standardize on what kind of Linux we're going to run on, and then we tried to give the servers to people, and then there are still like we find ourselves doing like consulting work, but then the people's server was broken because their driver was bad and their network hard, and we're still helping with that too. And it's like it goes beyond like
Yeah. Just the
we're
project.
like this is too hard for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, there's a whole ton of people like we have ClueCon every year. Um, that whole crowd, like everyone knows how to set up their own free switch and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's not the world. Like there's a certain amount of people that like even in the companies that would do it, they would keep turning over their employees and stuff. And then they'd like, we'd try to help and come in. And it was learning from all these things, like watching the most successful ones needed a minimum of like $30 million and like, VC backing and a whole pile of engineers to put whatever is next on top of FreeSWITch. So like
Yeah.
sometime, I think it was 2017, that's when it finally got like I had this vision in my head since 2008. And I've like kind of like Close Encounters is the third kind. I kept kind of sketching the Devil's Tower all in my head. Like I keep seeing this
Yeah.
like eventuality of what I wanted to do, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And like I kind of played around with a bunch of different stuff. But I think 2017 was around the time when it was like really like it's cool to could keep polishing the super powerful engine, but I want to build the rest of the car now. Like, right, I want to build the whole Ferrari and not just the engine. And so in order to do that, because you're not going to get everyone to use this kind of the telecom through the internet if it's
Yep.
that hard, right? So like how
Yep.
can we simplify things and expose some of this stuff? And so that was really the inspiration. And the first thing we did was like we started the company, raised some money. We made doing everything Twilio could do was easy, so we did that first, because we think that's what everyone will know already. Because ironically, like Twilio, like you said, was made out of Asterisk, and like its entire skills, like all the features of Twilio is basically just how I would move Asterisk for people that didn't understand building it themselves, right? So like
Yep.
in its own way, like structurally and fundamentally, that's the limitation. Most of the
Yeah.
stuff you can do in Twilio is because it's the only thing you could do in Asterisk. And I always didn't really want to permanently duplicating things that you can do there was a simple thing. Like we
Yeah.
wanted to go past that. We always considered that like our overlap with Twilio was just an app on our network. It wasn't actually our product. It was
Yep.
like if you want to run this Twilio syntax, go for it. We have an interpreter for it, but like we had bigger ambitions for it. So like my goal is like to really convert all telecom to software. And what I did along the way was thinking about the problem. So we started SignalWire because we knew we wanted to make it. It's still trying to make this like vision come true. Um, I just found an old podcast when the company was only like a week old where I was talking on you remember the Randy Resnick thing?
Oh,
He used to,
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I found the old recording of that where I was
Oh,
telling them all
cool.
about it. And it's like all stuff that was just all conjecture back then and we're starting to achieve now. So it was like 6 years later.
Yep.
Um,
Excellent.
but the idea was, to take to put a white space between this complex problem of like building everything yourself, right? Like if you have the means, go
Yep.
for it. Like some people are just like gods at DevOps and stuff, and like that's why we made all this stuff. But you can
Yep.
go set it up if you know what you're doing, put like racks of servers, install FreeSWITCH on every one of them, figure out how to round robin all the calls between it, and set it like deal with the updating it all the time and figure out how to integrate into it. We made it very programmable on purpose. Like it's got a million hooks. That's why everybody's products are made out of it now because it's like you can really kind of just shove that engine into anything.
Yep.
But then we're thinking like on the other side of it, you're getting these um call them like UCAS vendors and CCAS vendors who are taking some of the features and then holding them hostage with like thousands of dollar per seat extra costs and insane things. The
Yep.
trucks are 2,400 bucks a month and like just trying to like put this giant enterprise spin on everything, and taking all those features
Yep.
and holding them hostage more or less. So it's like
Hmm.
it's either hard to get because you have to build everything or it's expensive because someone's holding hostage. So we put
Yep.
the space in the middle is our next step in our journey, um, which is putting the U in the programmable communications. So now we call it Programmable Unified Communications because we are actually
Ah.
taking the networking aspects of, say, your classic UCAS and CCAS and
Yep.
putting those features programmable so that you can drop in an extension and like create, say, like your own UCAS system by
Yep.
provisioning lines and having a reference app that where our network that's all over the place can like stand up and handle all the calls. So that you can also read and
Cool.
write your own, say, like set it up the way you want. So
Hmm.
we have this like kind of like time sliced FreeSWITch instead of forcing you to like dig into the guts of FreeSWITch. We made this SignalWire markup language where it is JSON based, and it's basically like the evolution of if anyone's used FreeSWITch, there's a dial plan. This is in JSON. It kind of expresses the entire call as one document that you can like host on us and it's serverless, and we'll just like crank
Exactly.
through
Yeah.
as many calls as you want to throw at it.
Yep.
And then you can build it with the GUI if you want, because we have like a little, drag and drop thing, or you
That's right.
can just
Yep.
like craft it, or you can craft it dynamically, kind of similar to what you would do in Twilio, only like it's all JSON and has different verbs and stuff. So it's like more complex.
Oh.
It's more like built around what FreeSWITCH does inside,
Yep.
instead of Twilio is based on what Asterisk does. This is more like the FreeSWITCH equivalent. So we tackled CPaaS that way. But we didn't want to we wanted to merge them all. So
Yep.
like in our category of programmable unified communication, we have actually taken all the asses and merged them into one thing.
Yep.
Um,
One huge ass. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where that's like one step closer to the goal, because that gives us people can provision their own phone lines and do whatever they want with them. And those phone
Exactly.
lines are no longer physical and tied to a telco. They start from a web app that you build. We have an SDK for it, or we give you a reference app. We have a mobile app, which is like basically like having, say, Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, only it's yours. So
Yep.
whatever you call is leading into your config. So you can build up anything you want. So yeah, like making that platform, it's like really building a whole layer above everything else. So it isn't like some people when they're open source and then they have a company that's usually like a one-to-one, like if it's like MySQL, they just try to
Yep.
sell you MySQL hosted somewhere. But like what we do at SignalWire, we're not trying to just like sell people FreeSWITCH, although we still have customers that subscribe to the enterprise FreeSWITCH when they want to do it themselves. Some of the
Mhm.
bigger guys, too late for them to go to the cloud or whatever. But like we still have, we hide most of it. We're not like we're putting like 5 layers more on top that most people, we've watched people over and over again try and build these layers, and then it
Yep.
takes them forever or they do it
Yep.
wrong. And we want to just like do that pain once, so everyone else
Gotcha.
can just start from the top, instead of like rebuilding everything every time they want to do something. So that's kind of like the main goal. And that gives us some really good flexibility, because like I don't know. I hadn't expected this way, like 1 year ago, all of a sudden AI is cool, right? Like it's been around for like 5, 6 years, but now
Oh
it's
yeah.
like
Long time. Yeah.
accessible, right? So like I didn't really see that coming. I guess I was too busy doing other stuff, but like once it was there, it was like I've been kind of that alone, that one topic, I've been working on building like all the little pieces that this kind of thing needs.
Hmm.
The kind of LLM is the last missing piece of it, because we had
Yes.
like doing it with NLP and other different ways. Like we've been doing
Yeah.
like IVRs and stuff since the beginning, like
Exactly.
for years, collecting speech. It used to suck because you have to like do a branch of every possible word someone said, and like all the code it takes to make an IVR the right way.
Exactly.
So
And all the delays when you're
yeah,
using, I mean, it was a pain
it
because
gets
I
lost and hangs up
uh,
on you, and like even when
Brian,
you know what you're doing, like you
oh yeah,
still it's still hard to get right. And we've made it
exactly.
easier when like we were talking about, like there used to be an IVR, like a voicemail system, was $1 million unit, and like
Yep.
we made it so you could just like write code and express it as like a Lua script and stuff. So it got a
Yep.
lot easier, and a bunch of people started having better, more successful IVRs. But like they're still like only so cool, right? There's a limit. Like even the ones that could understand speech were kind of, oh, it's cool and understands what I said, but it only really picks like one word out of everything I'm saying. So like, but we did have all these mechanisms for
Yep.
collecting all this. And I had been playing
Exactly.
around with like building an assistant that even like when there's advancements in NLP processing. So try and chop the sentence up and be smarter about what thing they're saying. And like, but then all of a sudden the LLM shows up. Um,
Yep.
and with the kind of skill set I have, I immediately kind of went and built like an orchestrator to be able to take, really, like I just built it around OpenAI being the most popular and easy to get to one.
Yep.
Others in AI are kind of obsessed with building their own models and stuff, but I think that's really kind of a waste of time right now, because I lived through the internet. The internet was born when the internet was new. Everyone was trying to be who's the one that made the internet, and then for 20 more years you can make Salesforce.com.
Yeah.
on top of the internet. Like, so I'm thinking I've lived through that. I want to make
Yep,
something now that actually is useful instead of like trying to, I don't want to innovate in like the actual AI itself
exactly.
because leave that to all the scientists. I don't have enough money to pay them all. I can only do so much about it with the team I have.
Exactly.
So like,
Focus, focus. Because
yeah, so we
Brian's been
decided,
sharing with me, the development of your AI agent, and it's cool. Over the past year, 18 months, he said, Alan, have a look at this. And then I go to a web page and then he said, call this number and see how like tweaking with response rates and different use cases. So it's been great to follow. And I'm really excited that that AI agent is what you want developers to hack on for TadHack Open. So maybe you could give some insight into some of the things that you're hoping to see in some of the hacks on your AI agent.
sure. So the focus for me was the AI agent is a implementation of a digital employee, right? Like
Okay.
you think of it like a the kind of employee you might give a part-time job to or something, right? Who
Yeah.
answers the phone, just like takes messages, whatever. Um, Starting from like the kind of role that a normal IVR would do, the difference is that we built a framework that would allow it's very similar to how the old web used to work. Like my vision of this comes probably from me being old and being through the internet and doing web forms and everything. But I always look at the AI part of it. The LLM is about collecting data. It's like the voice version of like a form. Remember the old
Yeah.
days you fill out a form and hit submit. So like the AI is just there to figure out what you want
Yeah.
and then it submits it. And then you have like your programmatic side, which manipulates and then goes to the next round, like almost like a turn-based thing with a
Yep.
in a little video game or something. So like we have the ability to kind of you can set up your agent, give it like a personality, whatever you want to say. There's this thing we call SWAG, the SignalWire AI Gateway. So basically, you can program a bunch of actions that are, say, like an easy example is like weather. If you
Yep.
wanted this agent to be able to know weather places, right? So you would say like you ask it, what's the weather in Orlando? That's it's collecting the data. It'll the AI actually will turn it into JSON for you, send it to our backend, then inside of our system, we can go. It calls your program, similar to how old CGIs used to work in the web
Yep.
days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
program can then call another webhook and go see what the weather is and give the answer back. And then it's able to instruct the AI like one more prompt, like, okay, the weather is 85 and sunny, and then conversation continues. So you can wire in practically anything just with a static document. So some of the early examples we had were like when Christmas was around, we had like a Santa bot that you could, if you
Yes.
asked it what you want for Christmas, it sounded like Santa. We just used one of those voice cloning things. But he would like look it up on Amazon, and then text you the link. You'd say, I want like a PlayStation 5 or something. And he would like look it up on Amazon and text it to you. That was just an example. Like you can
Yeah.
fix that. Imagine that paradigm and in any other use cases. Like it's aware of what you asked for, can look it up somewhere else and then influence and can send text messages, can forward the call. So basically that Santa example is a single file. It's a JSON data file, text
Cool.
file. You just like install it in your account and hit save, and then you can call it as many times as you want, and it'll just run in parallel. The next one I think they did was like a political bot, like it'll
Mhm.
they made it a little more elaborate. It hooked it up to a database so that you could populate a database with a bunch of questions, and then every time someone called, it would look through the questions and then ask them all and write the answers down. There was another one on Valentine's Day where they gave out flowers, different flowers based on you said what kind you want. And so the idea is that you're like really trying to get it to do some work too. You're not just like press one for sales. Like you're
Yeah.
actually like having it
Dialogue. Yeah.
curb the delay of people. Like if you wanted to have like you don't need 100 people to answer the phone only to tell you basic stuff. So you can teach it different things. What do you want, what kind of question you want to answer. You can get super elaborate and you can even have it go into different contexts where, like, it has 5 or 6 functions, and then like you can program them. It's all really easy stuff. So it's like the same kind of simple programming that all the other good stuff we've been doing is, but now it's like to manipulate the AI. So it's like really kind of takes all the mystified bullshit away and lets you just get something.
Exactly. But I like the analogy used of it's just like a part-time digital employee. Just treat it like that, because it has that power of being aware and understanding. So
Yeah,
that's really
you're not
cool.
trying to build a professor. You're just trying to, you just need help. Like the answer
Yeah,
to the phone
that's it.
from the wife. I think of it like the airplane, the movie, the co-pilot, the
Hmm.
emergency one, the inflatable guy that would when you need it, it shows up and then it goes away again. You can have a
That's a
hundred
good
at
one. Yeah.
once, or you can have, as many as you need, and then you're only paying it while it's on the phone too. So
Yeah.
it's more economical than like some people can't afford to hire people or they can't even find enough people to work for them.
Yes.
And for these
Exactly.
menial tasks, you might as well let the AI do it.
Ultimately, exactly. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to sort of thank you so much for your support for TadHack Open. Really excited. I think for example, we have one team out of Nigeria. They've built a platform and they've struggled with performance on one of their AI agents. So they're really excited to be using your AI agent. So that for them is just an important hack that they want to, use TADHack Open for. And of course, they're launching that platform, but it'll be good if they see your agent and then decide to, extend their platform with that. So it's very
That's what we're
relevant.
hoping. We hope we solve problems for people because I think like anyone can say like try ChatGPT and go, oh, I'll just connect this to TTS and it's gonna be cool. And like you get one call and like, oh, I want two and five and 10. I want 1,000 calls at once. Oh wait, I only have this demo only works on my laptop. It's like harder than it looks. And I
Exactly.
went through that whole exercise and lucky me that I'm like old enough to be like obsessed with C code still, which no one even likes anymore. But for me, that's like the power. The reason we were
Yes.
able to scale so much is we write everything like in C code and can orchestrate everything like inside the metal almost, like instead of
Yes. Oh yeah.
piecemealing a bunch of third-party APIs from the outside.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, through my engineering degree, it was all C code because I was in telecom, so it was all real-time control. So the only language you could use where you get the performance was C. But anyway, again, thank you so much, Anthony. I'm going to sort of now we can move on to a little bit more commercial. So I was just creating a gap. So stuff we'll have for developers, getting to know you, getting to know your history, getting to know what you're looking for on the hackathon. That's perfect. But let's have a chat now because give Johnny a chance to talk. I'm interested to understand. So where are you going with SignalWire? Technically, it's really cool, making it basically as easy as possible with just basically the JSON documents. I think is really powerful. But where are you looking to take it beyond there?
Do you mean business-wise or
Business wise, yeah, because we got Johnny. We want Johnny to start talking now.
looks like he's muted maybe?
Are you there, Johnny? We can't hear you.
I muted myself because I was so fascinated talking with Anthony there. You there?
Yep, we're
Yep.
Hello?
here. Yep.
Look, Anthony, I'm so excited for you here. First, I want to thank you for personally for standing up and backing us on the messaging monopolies piece. I mean, obviously, I go way back with FreeSWITCH when I restructured the company NACT, and you just changed the game with FreeSWITCH. I don't think people out there really know, how important you've been to the ecosystem and anybody's built on you. I've been really curious on. Look, there's going to be a big seismic shift in the industry. Obviously, you know that. You just kind of rebrand the entire industry now because we needed that too. Because CPaaS is kind of like last week,
I call it
and
the CPast.
CPast. You know what, Alan? Write that down. It's CPast. Hey, wait till the bird gets his hands on that.
Oh
Robert
yeah.
Vis. We just had Robert Vis on, and he made a bid for Twilio, and it was quite an interesting podcast. You should listen to it. And he's making quite the stir in the industry. But to see, what you've built in FreeSWITCH and to know where you're going with SignalWire, Is this something that you're going to go public with? Is this something where people are going to be able to participate? Or is this something that you're keeping close to the hip?
Well, SignalWire has raised 2 financing rounds. Our most recent was a Series B, like in 2021. We tried to add some strategics the last time because part of the mission is to win over some of the telcos out there. So we have some backing from DT and T-Mobile. The idea is hopefully that all these telcos kind of have an innovation versus harvest mentality. They always hire someone to complain about the innovation and push the bar forward, but then they also hire someone to harvest as much money as they can from the stuff that's already there. So the idea is like to try and work with some of them and like and unlock some of the more of those innovation things. But really for us, we don't know where we're going to end up. Like when you do a startup like this, you basically have to plan every path all the time and figure out which one you're on. So in our journey now, we're just focused on the moment, which is like get to the next step. Surviving kind of. It takes a little bit of courage for us because we could continue if we wanted to keep trying to scale, say like only your classic phone numbers and texting kind of CPaaS 1.0 stuff. But the margins just keep getting worse.
Yes.
We're not trying to gouge anyone, so it's like it's not like it wasn't our primary goal in the first place, right? So I consider it more like those kinds of things to me are just kind of table stakes to have, and figure out cooler ways to use them more than us trying to sell them raw. Like I make an analogy about selling flour. Like I want to be a bakery. Like I don't want to sell. If I was a bakery, why am I out back selling flour to people? The more you sell a kind of raw service like that, diminishes the point of everything. So our goal is pretty much to transition to just forgetting about telco stuff. Like I want people to start feeling like my phone system is in the internet. It starts on my website. Like I don't have to deal with telcos because everyone just goes to my website and presses a button and they call me. Right? Like I can still have all the IP phones in the back end if I want. Every different person could have 7 ways to get called. So it's a mobile app where you're running a virtual phone line inside your mobile app on top of, on any other device that can handle it, or you could still use good old physical phones. If you have to, go through the PSTN, and really kind of push towards a business model that's more around empowering everyone to build things that don't need any of that boring telco stuff that is really just rotting, to be honest, and like getting cheaper and pointless and harder to do.
So focusing on applications or helping enterprises build the applications.
Making money on top of the channel.
Well, where the PSTN becomes the channel of last resort. So it's there for those grandmas that can only be contacted through the home phone. But for everybody else, there's the internet and it just runs over there. So it just scales down that piece and just focuses on making it as easy as possible for businesses to implement. As you said, it's the contact center or the generation beyond that in terms of, for particular vertical. And most of the communications is simply over the internet, not over the PSTN.
Yeah, for instance, our AI agent can answer the phone. We run one on our own phone number. If you call SignalWire, it collects your information, checks if you have a ticket or not, asks you if you need to add anything else, and throws it in, opens the ticket, and then we call you. Why do you need a call center? The only reason for a call center is to keep people waiting on hold all day long so you can charge them by the minute for it, when instead you should just be engaged at something that actually is listening to your problem. And even if it can't help you immediately, it collects it all, sends it to someone, and then they get back to you instead of setting this
really powerful. Really powerful.
Cool.
CPast.
I know.
Minessale. That's the headline. That's the headline. The king, the FreeSWITCH king. We go from CPast is dead from Robert Vis to The
CPast.
king and the original OG coming out and coming out with CPast.